The money you never spend is worth more than the money you invest. That is not a slogan, and it is not a moral lesson about frugality. It is arithmetic. Because a dollar you do not spend is a guaranteed, risk-free, tax-free return, delivered instantly with a 100% success rate. And a dollar you invest is a hope. And once you see the actual numbers on this, you will understand why so many people spend years obsessing over the wrong lever entirely, chasing something they cannot control, while the thing they completely control sits there, ignored, quietly deciding their entire financial future. Let me start with the finding that most people find genuinely hard to accept. In the first decade of building wealth, the percentage of your income that you save matters far more than the return you earn on it, not slightly more. Far more. A person saving 15% of their income with perfectly average, mediocre returns will comfortably beat a person saving 5% with brilliant returns. And it is not close. The one who saved more wins, even though the other one was better at investing. Sit with how much that contradicts everything you have absorbed. All the attention, all the content, all the anxiety in personal finance goes to returns. Which fund? Which stock? Which strategy? Is the market too high? Should I wait? And meanwhile, the lever that actually determines the outcome in those crucial early years, the boring, unglamorous savings rate, gets almost none of your attention because it does not feel like skill. Returns feel like skill. Saving feels like a grind. Here is why this happens mechanically. Compounding is genuinely the most powerful force in finance. But it has a condition attached that nobody emphasizes. Compounding needs something to compound on. It needs capital. It needs fuel. A spectacular return on a tiny amount of money produces a tiny amount of money. Doubling $100 gives you $100. Doubling 100,000 gives you 100,000. Same skill. Same genius. Completely different life. The percentage is not what makes you wealthy. The percentage applied to a meaningful base is what makes you wealthy. And the base comes from one place only. Money you did not spend. Think about it as an engine and fuel. Investing is the engine. It is powerful, it is sophisticated, and everybody stares at it. Savings is the fuel. And people spend years obsessing over engine tuning, trying to squeeze another % of performance out of it, while the tank is nearly empty. And a beautifully tuned engine with no fuel does not go anywhere at all. Meanwhile, someone with a perfectly ordinary engine and a full tank drives straight past them. Returns get all the glory. But fuel is what actually moves the car, and in the early years, fuel is almost the entire story. Now here is the deeper point, the one that changes how you should see every single dollar you spend. When you invest a dollar, what do you actually get? You get a hope, a well-founded hope, historically supported, but a hope. It might return 7%. It might return nothing. It might be down 30% when you need it. It is taxed. It carries risk. It requires time and nerve. That is what an invested dollar is. Now, what do you get when you simply do not spend a dollar? You get that dollar. Immediately. Guaranteed. With no risk whatsoever. With no tax on it. With no possibility of it going down. The avoided expense is the only return in all of finance with a 100% success rate. It cannot fail. It cannot have a bad year. It does not care what the market does or what the economy does or what happens in the news. You decided not to spend it, and it is yours, permanently, with total certainty. We do not treat these two things equally, and that is the great irrational habit at the center of most people's financial lives. If someone offered you a guaranteed, tax-free, risk-free return, you would take it instantly, and you would call it the deal of a lifetime. That deal is available to you every single day in the form of an expense you choose not to have, and most people walk past it a dozen times a day to go and research a fund that might, possibly, if things go well, do slightly better than average. There is a psychological reason we ignore all of this, and it is worth naming, because you will feel it fighting you the moment you try to act on any of it. Investing feels like doing something. Saving feels like not doing something. One feels like an action, a decision, a move on the board. The other feels like an absence, a denial, a small defeat. So even when the arithmetic is overwhelmingly in favor of the saving, It does not feel like a win, and your brain keeps score in feelings, not in arithmetic. The person who cancels a subscription feels a tiny loss. The person who buys a stock feels like a player. Both are wrong about what just happened, and the entire financial industry reinforces this relentlessly. Because there is no money in telling you to spend less. Nobody sells you a product for not buying something. There is no fee attached to a subscription you canceled, no commission on a car you did not upgrade. But there is an enormous industry built on your interest in returns, and it will happily hold your attention there forever. So the noisiest, most sophisticated, best-funded voices in your financial life will always be pointing at the engine, and almost nobody will be pointing at the fuel. That is not a conspiracy. It is just where the money is, but it means the most important lever in your financial life is also the one with the fewest people telling you about it. Let me make it concrete with something that will genuinely bother you. Take two identical portfolios, same amount invested, same monthly contributions, same market, same returns. The only difference between them is the fee. One pays 1% a year in costs. The other pays 1/10 of 1%. That is the only difference, a number so small you would barely notice it on a statement. Over 30 years, the difference between those two portfolios is over $500,000, $500,000. Not from better investing, not from picking better stocks, not from timing anything, purely from money that was never spent on a fee. That is what a cost you never pay is actually worth once it has decades to work. And notice, nobody had to be clever. Nobody had to predict anything. One person simply avoided a cost, and it made them $500,000 richer than someone who did everything else identically. Now apply that same logic to your actual life, because this is where it gets personal. When you cancel a recurring expense, you are not saving that amount once. You are creating a permanent stream. A subscription you cancel is not a small win this month. It is a cost that will now never be paid again for the rest of your life, and every one of those unpaid amounts is free to go and compound. Think about what a recurring expense really is. It is the reverse of an investment. Instead of a small amount of money going out once and working for you forever, it is a small amount of money going out forever, working against you, and when you cancel it, you do not just stop the bleeding, you flip it. That expense becomes an employee, a silent, permanent employee, working for you every single month forever, who never asks for a raise, never has a bad year, never loses money in a downturn, and never once asks you to check on it. That is what a canceled cost actually is. The best employee you will ever hire, and you hire them by doing nothing at all. And this is where the mental reframe becomes genuinely useful. Stop thinking about recurring expenses as prices. Start thinking about them as amounts of capital. Because a recurring monthly cost is, mathematically, equivalent to a large lump sum working against you. To generate a given amount of income every month, forever, you would need a very substantial pile of invested money, which means that every recurring cost you carry is the exact equivalent of having that pile of money and pointing it in the wrong direction. Cancel the cost, and you have effectively acquired that pile without saving a penny of it. You did not earn it. You did not invest for it, you simply stopped paying for it, and it appeared. This is why the highest return investment available to almost anyone is not a fund or a stock. It is a canceled subscription. A car you did not upgrade. A habit you did not indulge. A lifestyle inflation you refused. Those returns are certain, immediate, and permanent, and they are available to you today, right now, with no risk, no research, and no waiting. There is one more thing about this that most people never notice, and it might be the most important. You have complete control over your savings rate. Total, absolute control. Nobody can take it from you. The market cannot vote on it. The economy cannot ruin it. You decide it. And you have precisely zero control over your returns. Zero. You cannot make the market go up. You cannot choose your rate of return. You can only choose to participate and then endure whatever happens. And what do people do with these two levers? They spend almost all of their attention, their anxiety, their time, and their emotional energy on the lever they cannot control at all, and almost none on the lever they control completely. It is one of the strangest and most self-defeating patterns in all of personal finance. Hours reading about the market, minutes thinking about the recurring cost that has been quietly draining them for 6 years. Now I want to be honest with you about the limit of this idea, because I am not telling you to cut everything and never invest. There is a point where this reverses. Once your invested base becomes large, returns start doing more work than your contributions can. A 10% gain on a substantial portfolio is more money than most people can possibly save in a year, and at that stage, the engine genuinely does start to matter more than the fuel. That crossover is real, and it will come if you keep going. But almost nobody watching this is there yet. In the beginning, and the beginning lasts longer than people think, your contributions dwarf your returns, and the thing standing between you and wealth is not your investment strategy. It is the size of the gap between what you earn and what you spend. So the order is not saving instead of investing. It is saving first so that investing has something to work with, and then letting the engine take over once there is finally enough fuel to burn. So here is the reframe, and it should genuinely change what you do this week. You are not choosing between saving and investing. That was never the choice, and the framing was wrong from the start. Saving is what makes investing possible. It is the fuel, and for most people, in most years, especially in the early ones, adding fuel does far more than tuning the engine. The person who quietly wins is not the one who found the perfect investment. It is the one who built a large gap between what they earn and what they spend, and then poured that gap into something ordinary for a very long time. And notice how quickly you can act on this compared to the alternative. Improving your returns is slow, uncertain, and largely out of your hands. But finding a recurring cost you no longer want takes an afternoon. You can go through your statements tonight, and by tomorrow, you will have permanently changed the trajectory of your finances by an amount that no amount of clever investing could match in a year. There is no waiting for the market. There is no risk of being wrong. The return begins the moment you cancel, and it never stops. So before you spend another hour optimizing a return you cannot control, go and look at what you are spending. Find the recurring cost you have been carrying for years without thinking. That is not a bill. That is a return sitting there, guaranteed, waiting for you to claim it. The money you never spend is the only money in your life that comes with a promise attached. The belief that wealth is built by clever investing was learned, taught by an entire industry that profits from your attention on returns and has no interest at all in your spending. Which means it can be unlearned. The pattern was learned, which means it can be rewired. Fill the tank before you tune the engine. Hire the silent employees by canceling what you do not need, and understand that every dollar you refuse to spend has already earned you a guaranteed return that no investor on earth can promise you. Next time, I want to show you why almost everything you believe about what wealthy people actually do with their money is wrong.